So, good morning. So this is going to be a little different, if you can't tell. Tim asked me to speak while he would be gone 3 or 4 months ago, something like that. And just a few weeks ago, he was like, hey, you're going to be starting whatever series we do after the What is the Church series. What do you want to talk about? And we threw some ideas around, and he's like, would you mind doing a sermon on financial literacy in the Bible? And I am ashamed to say that I laughed in the man's face. Oh, you want me to give other people advice on money? Good one. No. So we were kicking ideas back and forth, and I just straight up asked him, we have now done sermons on what is the church. What if we talked about what the church isn't? And, we went back and forth, and I'm like, no, I'm being serious. What if we talked about the devil? What if we just straight up dug into that part of the Bible that we don't talk about? And he grilled me into why do you want to talk about this? And there were three main reasons. I need the clicker thing. Okay, it is supposed to buzz. Cool. So, why do I want to talk about this at church? 3 reasons. 1, no one ever does. I'm going to say the 2 most terrifying words to Methodists. Audience participation. Okay, no hymnals. We're good so far. So I'm going to ask, everyone who has been in church ever before, have you ever had someone do a sermon where they talk about the devil specifically? Show of hands. All right, so we have one person. That's not a lot, and some of you have been in church for, twice as long as I have been alive. So it's something that it needs addressed. Second, people have questions about it. People have legitimate wonders. I was a youth director for 5 years, and I finally just said, we're going to do a study on Revelations and on the devil, because no one wants to talk about it. Because that's when people are like, so, you've been asking a lot of weird questions. Are you in a cult? Okay, 1, don't accuse people of being in cults. It's really hurtful, speaking from experience. Second, they need to be addressed. There's the one joke I always make. Some people are tired of it, but I still think it's funny. Christianity, excellent religion, terrible book club. We'll talk about it. We've been reading the same book for 2,000 years. We have not gotten everyone to read the book before the discussion, and we can't get everyone to read the same edition of the book. But just imagine for a moment, think of your favorite TV show, movie, book series, whatever. If you went to, a discussion with friends, something. I like using Star Wars or The Lord of the Rings because they're kind of common, everyone knows them. Imagine if you walked in, it's where did the part in the movie where they're going to destroy the Death Star? Oh, what's the Death Star? Oh, it's this big planet-sized thing that was built by the Sith. What are the Sith? We don't talk about them. Oh, it's good versus evil. The good guys are the Jedi, the bad guys are something we don't talk about. We're missing half the story, and it gives depth and understanding to the part that we do want to talk about. So it needs to be addressed. And third, I will be the first person to admit, I am a weird person. I know. The gasps of shock I just heard. He's weird? No. But yeah. Everyone has those books that they read that make them better Christians. For my mom, it was The Purpose-Driven Life. That book is huge to her. For my dad, it was a devotional book his dad gave him, my grandpa. For me, it is Sun Tzu's The Art of War. I'm going to agree with you. It's a great book. It helps with pretty much everything. If you haven't read it, do. It's very short. But there's a quote in there that I brought up when I was talking about this to Tim. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. I am personally not a huge fan of the term spiritual warfare. It just gets a little hinky in my mind. But it's a term a lot of people get, and it kind of fits with this. We have a lot of people who have a great fundamental understanding of Christianity, of doing right, but then when it comes to the other half, the wrong, the evil, the Satan part of it, they're woefully unprepared. And so we see it when we do joys and concerns most times. It's like, oh, there are all these good things. But in almost equal number, or more so, there are bad things that could maybe be avoided if we just had the second half of the information. So we're going to bring that to you over the next 4 weeks, 3 after this one, for those of you who actually like math and therefore need prayer. So, I'm trying to make this not super heavy since, we're talking about the devil, so we're going to need laughter and hand raising as we go. So just work with me. So, who is Satan? When most people hear Satan, the devil, the adversary, old scratch, I spend a lot of time Googling what are other names for the devil. They're going to confiscate my work computer one of these days. I just ahead of time know. We get things like this. Some guy in red spandex who's like, nah, it's me, Satan, nah. And we're like, and he often is portrayed like this. And people are like, so, what's your point? This is from a comic from around the 1950s. And it's this time period, 50s and 60s, when TV started getting a little bit bigger and a less like Father Knows Best, My Three Sons. You got into more shows that could portray fantastical elements. We got things like this. I wrote my bachelor's thesis at Bluffton on the history of comic books. So within this room and maybe town, I am the authority on this kind of stuff, where people got the most common conceptions of the devil started with these, where it's like, oh yeah, he wears red spandex, runs around, carries a pitchfork. Those didn't really show up a lot in America until stuff like this. So this is where most people get their ideas. Also, if I start talking too fast, throw something, because I'm really bad at slowing myself down. So, this is our starting conception. This is the devil. Biblically, we get a very different picture. When I first brought this up at home, Sam's like, oh, what are you and Tim going to talk about? I'm like, talking about the devil. And she did that. Can you at least be normal in front of other people's forehead scratch? Like she was doing this in the kitchen. And I was like, no, I cannot. But she even said, we don't talk about the devil in church because he's not mentioned in the Bible. And I'm like, but he is here. And so these are the verses where we get the backstory, the history, and you'll notice they're not in order in the books, and they're kind of spread out. So we have to pick them apart and put them together. And we're going to skip a lot of the antagonistic studies where it's like, oh, well, what if this word means this and this? We're going to take these at somewhat face value for simplicity. So if you want to argue about this, please don't. So the first set of verses out of Ezekiel, he was Lucifer, who was created as a guardian cherub, which I'm going to reference some books used by the Catholics, some non-canonical gospels, some of the, what's that A word, other books that we have that don't count. I'm going to reference some of those. In those, they talk about there's a hierarchy of 9 different kinds of angels, and a guardian cherub falls somewhere between 4 and 5. It's one of those two. So mid-level, tasked with keeping watch over the throne room of God. So he was, powerful. He was there. And it even says in the verse, he was born of incredible beauty, covered in stones and gold, and was just this great-looking angelic creature. There's a story that me and Sam laugh at. The Catholic Church at one point hired a sculptor to make a sculpture of the devil to put at the opposite end of a room as a sculpture of the Lord. And the first guy made one, and they're like, okay, this is too attractive to be the devil. We wanted fire and ugly, so they excommunicated him from the church and hired his brother. And they're like, we need you to make this statue of the devil. And he made it and pulled the sheet off, and it was more attractive. And so they excommunicated him too and threw both of them in a hole, and we just found them 100 years ago. It was a whole big thing. But in the Bible, he is a creature of incredible beauty. To those who just walked in, the youth who are giving me really confused looks, yes, we're talking about the devil. Stick with me. There's a lot of stuff in here for you. Okay. we're going to need that soap that gets tar and feathers off of people, so just be aware. So, 1, incredibly handsome, incredibly powerful. 2, he became filled with this hubris. It says that he wanted to ascend his position and have a throne above the clouds higher than that of God himself. So Lucifer was like, oh, I could be God. Who says I couldn't? And so he gathered up his own host of angels and started an uprising. And it says in Revelations, the 3rd one, where it says that he lost, there was a war in heaven. Not just one battle, but many. And if you read some of the Catholic Gospels, they are detailed. And if you want to kill 4 hours, look them up and read them because they're awesome. It's like reading The Lord of the Rings, but it's like the Archangel Michael and all these guys with spears and stuff. It's a good way to kill an afternoon if you're a Christian nerd. Just throwing that out there. Thank you for the 3 of you who laughed with me. So, in Revelation 20:10 and Luke 10:18 and 19, he got kicked out. That's where it's talking about and he fell from heaven like lightning into the dark place, which that verse gets quoted a lot when they're trying in a TV show to make someone as a bad guy. They're like, oh, and I saw Lucifer fall from heaven as lightning, and it was me. It's like, okay. So, you may have heard that one before. And then last, in Jude and Job, the host of angels were locked away in darkness. And in Job specifically, it says that Satan was forced to wander the dirt of earth. So he wanted to be above the clouds. What's the best punishment? Grounded, literally. So, he's stuck here to wander the earth, and he's this is where we get that he's in the garden, he has all of this interaction with mankind. So this right here is the biblical background, at least, for who is the devil, where does he come from, what's his story. I didn't read them to you because we would be here forever. But you now have the gist of the thing. So, I am tasked the first week, who is the devil as a tempter? Tim is going to cover him as a deceiver and as something else. I personally did not look at Tim's outlines, so I didn't steal stuff from him, because that's just a mean thing to do. So Tim will cover those, but I'm going to cover Satan as a tempter. And this is where we're going to get into some more audience participation. I want you to raise your hands if you agree with the statements I say. So let's just, to make sure everyone's hands work. You need water to live. Okay, this is good. I like this. Let's keep this going. You're doing better than my students, so cool. Okay, can we all agree that at points in the Bible, Jesus faced temptation? Okay, very good. We're going to read those here in a minute. Who here also will raise their hand and agree with the statement, Jesus was fully man and fully God and completely without sin? Okay, good, because that's one of the biggest things in our religion, that he was without sin. So we're all there. So the reason why I bring this up, and one of the things I want the youth to notice, is it says, Jesus faced temptation, but was without sin. Meaning temptation is not a sin. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is not something to hide. It's not something to be like, I was tempted today, and I'm going to hell for it. No. You were tempted. We all are. Jesus was. It's how you deal with it. And we're going to come back to this. But let's talk a little bit about boilerplate temptation. Who here has faced temptation in the last week? If you drive on the highway, your hand should be up. Okay. A few specifics. Who here has ever had to wait in the line at the bank for about 10 minutes, and after about 3 minutes, you start thinking, if I was going to rob this place, how would I do it? All right, couple hands, yeah. One of the biggest ones that I discovered a couple years ago, there's a French word for it. I don't know French, I barely know English. But the English translation is call of the void. Who here has ever been up on a really high place, Niagara Falls, Empire State Building, and you look down, and in the back of your mind, there's that little voice that just says, jump. Yes. Or if you're driving down the highway, and you just, and you just think, what if I don't turn? And your brain just kind of shows your car like Dukes of Hazzarding into the field. We all have that? Yeah. It's just those little, like, you're on a bridge, you're like, it's scary, because I remember thinking as a kid, like, I think I'm like a psychopath, because I keep thinking about jumping off things and, like, crashing cars into stuff. No, that's just, it's a little tempting voice in your head, like, do a thing. And so we all have those temptations somewhere. And it's not something that we should be ashamed of. It's something that needs talked about. Because when we hide these things, that's how the devil gets you. So, we're going to read Matthew 4, 1 through 11. I will read it to you. And then we're going to talk about temptation as a thing. I'm going to use the word thing a lot. So, then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man should not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all of the kingdoms of the world in their splendor. "All of this I will give you," he said, "if you bow down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and angels came and attended him. So right here we see Jesus was tempted 3 times. And this is big because this was one of the last things that happened before he started his ministry. To minister, he had to overcome the most human, base problem we have, and that's temptation. And he did. So, we're going to talk for a minute about the temptations. Who doesn't love My Girl? It's a great song. Now let's talk about the temptations of Christ. I told you we're going to keep this light. So, first things first, he was tempted to turn rocks into bread. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. I cannot fast for 40 minutes. So yes, he would be hungry. So, this is one of our most base temptations. The temptation to need something. It's in a modern world where everything has become so incredibly commercial, so incredibly just like purchase-based. 2 weeks ago, middle of October, I went to Walmart on my way to work because I needed face paint for something I was doing in class. And it was already gone. That whole shelf was wiped and full of Christmas stuff. And like there were sales. I'm like, who's buying Christmas stuff in the middle of October? And if it's you, don't tell me, because I'm doing my best to love those people as a Christian brother. Help me here. Thanksgiving is still a thing. So, but it's just buy, consume. You gotta have it, you gotta have this, you gotta have that. And we get that in ourselves. We want things we don't need because in our minds they get disguised as needs. I need the newest cell phone. I need the nicest clothes. I need all of these things when we don't. But it's how it weasels its way in. And in your heart, there's that specific space that God goes. And slowly, it gets bumped and that gets refilled with like, oh, I don't need to go to church. I do need to stay home and watch this thing. Go to this sale. Buy this. Do that. To show, look at all this stuff I have. Yay! Doesn't matter. Can't take it with you. Don't try. So, first thing we're tempted with, false needs. The second thing, this one gets a little more curious. It's where we're tempted to test, to jump off and be caught. I struggled with this one the most, and so I had to take it to the highest moral authority that I know, my wife. Of all the things about her, she has but one moral flaw, and that is a horrible taste in men. So I took it to her. The same flaw that James has. So, I was like, I'm not quite sure how to take testing. Because, you know, there's the basic, like, we're tempted to, like, test the limits. How much of this can I get away from, get away with? How much can I do these things? But then she made the point of, sometimes we're tempted to test, the love of God itself. And we do see that, because there's that if God's love is everlasting and always there, yeah, I've skipped church for 6 weeks, but he can forgive 6 just as much as 7, so it doesn't matter if I go this week. So we get this thing in ourselves to justify. We're tempted to say oh, my sin's not that bad, or oh, that's not even a sin to begin with. If I stop tomorrow, it's the same as if I stop today. God doesn't even perceive time the way that we do. I don't need to worry about this or that, but that's not the case. If you are doing something that you even slightly perceive as wrong, probably shouldn't do it, but we're tempted to just keep going, push forward. Don't give it up. You don't need to. You're still going to church. Everyone still thinks you're a good person. But are you? Are you justifying sin? And the last one is power. We are tempted constantly with the idea of power. It goes back to needs. If I get this thing, if I need this thing, I will have control. I will admit, my brain works faster than my mouth, and my mouth doesn't listen when my heart says, don't say those things. So it's thought, mouth, shouldn't have said that. I'm going to speak again to the incredible grace of my wife. I get up 2 hours before she does pretty much every day. So yesterday I'm on the couch, just piddling around on my phone. She comes in, sits down next to me, puts her head on my shoulder, and she's like, good morning. I'm like, oh, good morning. And she's, we're just kind of enjoying being there in the quiet. And I'm already sweating just from talking. I am a very warm person. And the conversation pretty much went like this. And again, no thought occurred. She said something to the effect of, are you too warm? Do you need me to move? And without even thinking, no, but would you mind brushing your teeth? And the whole day just went from there. And I spent the rest of it trying to struggle my way back up. And she never held it against me. But man, I wish I hadn't said it. And it's just, we say these things either without thinking or because we know. Like yesterday, I had a pretty unhealthy conversation with someone, and there were things that I wanted to say. I wanted to say things that I knew would knock them down a notch. If we're here, and I have this much more power than they have. And that's not okay. And it also goes into, we don't test, but we want power over situations. And that comes in the form of we worry about things instead of really placing our faith in the Lord. My mom, love her, God bless the woman for all she had to deal with parenting me, worries about me still to this day, as mothers do. A couple weeks ago, I went by myself to a concert in Toledo. It was at the Huntington Center. It was the final stop for Leonard Skinner in Toledo. None of my friends wanted to go because no one listens to that but me. And so my mom, the tickets went to their house. So I had to go pick them up. She's like, oh, where are you going? Oh, here. Do you have anyone going with you? And as soon as I said no, she got that look of, my baby. And she was like, and I'm like, don't worry. And she's like, but I'm like, what are you even afraid of, Mom? And she's like, what if someone puts drugs in your drink and tries to kidnap you? And I'm like, they would spend half the ransom money on food till you came and got me. What? No. Do they have a team of people to throw me in a van? You have nothing to worry about. But she does, because she wants that control. And it lures her away from, just put your faith in God. Your son is not going to get kidnapped. Be like kidnapping a cow out of a field. Just let it go. This sermon is 90% biblical, 10% fat jokes about myself. Just roll with it. Note to Tim, who's going to watch this later, that's how you get laughs. Self-deprecating humor. So, but we want that power, we want control, and we think we can get it when we can't. There is no way for us to control the world around us. God controls the world around us, and we live in it through petitioning to Him. So all of these different temptations, you can basically put any temptation you might face into one of these 3 categories. I tried. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And all of them can be beaten in pretty much the same ways. And this is why I A, am glad the youth are here, and B, glad that everyone raised their hand that yes, we have all faced some temptation, and that it's not a sinful thing to be ashamed of. It's really not. We all deal with it. But there are three main ways to combat temptation. And the first, Jesus says directly, man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. You beat temptation through prayer and meditation on the word. When I am tempted to blow money on stuff, and I've gotten better at this, have I not? Yes, I have. There's that, do I need it? And you take half a second to really think, and you pray Lord, is this being a good steward of what I have, of the income I have through the job you have given me? And generally it's no. So you don't buy it. Or if it's yes, then you do and you take good care of it. So just prayer and meditation alone are a good thing to start with. And I'm not just speaking to the youth. I'm talking to anyone who may have had these types of issues. Because temptation is a universal thing. So first, you have prayer and meditation. Second is really why I had you all raise your hands. Temptation comes at you the most when you are alone. Jesus fought off three distilled, the most essential temptations by himself. We can't really do that. It's very difficult. So we can fight this. We can fight this influence through communion with one another, through talking. Nowadays, I had this conversation with my dad years ago. Sin is way closer. My phone is never out of reach, and if it is, you'll see me do the Sam, call my phone. She's like, it's in your shirt pocket. Oh, okay. And I have to wait a second while my blood pressure drops. But when my dad was a teenager, if you wanted illicit sexual material, magazines and stuff, you had to drive to a store, park in an open parking lot, walk in front of God and everyone, ask the clerk, pay for it, walk back out, take it home, sneak it back. There's all of these steps where there are people. Nowadays it's, done. It's right there. But it's just as easy when you're facing that temptation to take your phone and instead of hitting one button, you hit Messenger. Hey, do you have a minute to talk? I just need someone else right now. I can't be, just me. And so we talk to other Christians. We talk about temptations. Those of you who have been in the church for, again, twice as long as I've been alive, you have dealt with temptation twice as long as I've been alive. 3 times as long as some of these, or no, it'd be 4 times. 4 times as long as some of the youth. Talking about overcoming these temptations brings you to point number 3. As you get older, certain temptations just become less and less. The more you work with others, the more you internalize the word, the stronger you become, and those temptations aren't even temptations anymore. You just walk by them. They roll off. They go away. When I was 16, 17, 18, there were temptations that I thought were going to plague me until the day I died. Because it was just every day, it's right there. I'll admit, 17, 18 in there, hormones raging, I had some anger issues. And being my size, anger issues are not something you want me to have. So, I had to pray about it. I had to talk to my friends. I had some friends who were, they're like, oh man, you just get mad about random stuff too? And we could talk about it. And I could call them and be like, dude, I'm going to rip someone's head off. And they're like, okay, why? Is your sister eating the last Little Debbie really something to get angry about? But no. Okay, yes, you're right. And, you talk. And now, I walk into a room every day of 28 13-year-old girls and do not get angry and do not raise my voice. I think I have anger pretty well controlled most of the time. Because I prayed and I talked to others and I got that in me. And so the temptations you're dealing with now can go away. You can, through the love of God, harden yourself against those slings and arrows of the devil himself. So we need to work together. We need to pray, we need to talk, and we need to share. And that's how we fight temptation. So please join me in prayer. Lord, thank you for bringing us all together today. Thank you for, the word you have given us and the protection you have provided us through one another and through prayer and community with you against the devil, Lord. And though we live in a world where we may be daily assaulted on all sides by sin and want, you give us the ability to not give in, to stand against it. And we thank you for that, Lord. In your gracious name I pray. Amen.